Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And let me tell you something, brother. To all the Speak of the Devil maniacs out there, I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, football is back. We made it through. We are going to talk Sun Devil football, fall camp. The pads are popping. The helmets are crashing around. Man, it's a good time of year.
We are getting very close. We're, basically inside a month, give or take, where we are whenever you're listening to this from the kickoff to the season. So fall camp is obviously, we are on the doorstep of that right now. It's kind of amazing because, that off season, it gives you the ebb and flow, the ups and downs, the transfer portal, spring ball, a little dead period. But now things are getting real again, and the bullets are going to fly. It's going to be live, and I'm really eager to see how Sun Devil fans handle this season and the expectations and that sort of roller coaster that might be forthcoming, as we know and as we'll talk about in following shows. A lot of interesting expectations being placed on ASU. There are some folks that probably think they're not going to do anything special this year, or at least not to the level of last year. So a lot to take in, a lot to digest, but today we're going to, take an early look here at fall camp because there's obviously a lot to discuss, a lot of familiar faces coming back. As we know, ASU has some of the best player retention and returning productivity in the nation, but some key faces that are going to be new to Tempe and obviously some big ones that left.
Yeah, ASU is among the nation's returners in terms of returning production, although there is the Cam Scadaboo and Shamari Simmons of the world that are gone, leave some big holes, but for the most part, Jai, the feel of this episode is so much different than the same one we did last year. So many question marks heading into that second year under Kenny Dillingham, coming off a 3-9 year, but now reigning Big 12 champs. Most of the key players are back. They've augmented in some areas where they needed some help. So maybe the number of battles is not the same as last year, but there's still some critical question marks.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the episode that we did not long with our, confidence rankings on the positions. And we were talking as we were going through the shows, it's like, even though this is like one that I'm placing in a section that makes it seem like there's a great deal of concern, there really isn't. I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory for ASU and Sun Devil fans. We don't know how to deal with nice things. So to know that this team brings back what it brings back and to really have to force yourself to be optimistic. That sounds weird to say, but I think that, there's a lot of different takes out there. And there is a lot of optimism. I'm sure that there are some fans that are cautiously optimistic or maybe kind of worried about, can they repeat? Can ASU stay on this high? Is this going to be life from here on out? Or is this maybe yet another blip on the radar, a spike of success that isn't followed, by similar winning? So, man, getting this thing started is going to be something. This is a new age in Sun Devil football. It's a hugely important season because, man, if ASU can go out there, I know I'm getting ahead of myself because we're talking about camping out the season yet, but if ASU can go out there and do something similar to what it did last year and you pair that together, then you might be really talking about some major trajectory, the program being in a different circumstance than it ever has been or has been in decades. But again, getting ahead of myself, let's rein things in and focus on these upcoming, few weeks of practices that are going to be so crucial in preparing ASU to defend its Big 12 championship.
Yeah, we can set aside the post-traumatic Sun Devil disorder for a while because there's a lot of optimism, and we're going to run down some of the reasons why. We're going to go down each of the position groups, but also we have like 20-ish questions, for each position or, across all those position groups, because there are some storylines, some key battles. And this is, of course, an opportunity, a time of year where maybe some guys that were coming a little bit on the outside looking in or coming off the radar make their mark and ultimately play a big role in the season ahead. Starting things off, Joe, of course, at quarterback, talked about in our position confidence rankings, ASU has one of the best in the country. It's a great spot to be in.
Yeah.
And also has a very experienced backup quarterback in Jeff Sims. So overall, this is a good position. The intrigue might be, lower in the depth chart. Unfortunately, Cam Dyer, the very talented freshman, is still out for the year with a knee injury. But, overall, I think all eyes are going to be on Sam Leavitt. The Heisman buzz is already starting locally and nationally. So just what kind of growth can he make?
Yeah, you got to avoid that sophomore slump. Man, we've talked about it a lot, but the growth and the development that we saw within the confines of last season. I mean, he takes Sam Leavitt against Wyoming, Mississippi State, then Sam Leavitt against Arizona, Iowa State, and Texas, even though, that was a difficult game against a very, very good team. But that was just a night and day difference. Some incredible growth over the course of that season. So, of course, expectations are high from within and from outside the program, as you mentioned. Heisman hopeful, and not just in a, hypothetical way. I've said it a few times, and I truly believe it, that I have not seen a Sun Devil athlete really in any sport, certainly football, in the time that I've been following ASU, that enters a season of play with the expectations placed upon him as are being placed upon Sam Leavitt this season. But man, he's a gamer. He's got the moxie. He's just kind of got the makeup that you like in a quarterback, to be able to do the things again this season that he did last year. But, you've got to go out and do it. He's a known commodity now. Last season, not a lot of film on him. Not a lot of people outside the program even knew who he was. Now, obviously, everybody knows who he is. So the onus of responsibility is going to be obviously on him, Marcus Arroyo, Kenny Dillingham. I mean, the entire offense to keep this thing going and to continue to grow. Part of that's going to take, some acclimation with some new receivers and that sort of thing. But this is a huge year for Sam Leavitt, not just for what it can do for Arizona State, but if he builds upon that 2024 season in a way that a lot of folks hope and expect him to, that can result in some big-time dollar signs for the guy playing at the professional level.
Yeah, of course, he's a guy that now DCs are going to be game planning for. This isn't a, stop Scattaboo and force the game on Sam. These defenses that ASU is going to be facing are going to be having Sam Leavitt square in the crosshairs. And I think, he's got, of course, the tools. He's got the arm talent. He's got the dual threat ability. We've seen the strides that he's made as a leader. That's all great. And you touched on it a second ago. I think the big question for me in camp regarding Sam Leavitt, how good is that rapport going to develop with the receivers not named Jordan Tyson? Jordan Tyson, all conference, all American caliber guy. We know that rapport has been there from the jump. But how is it going to work out with the Jalen Mosses and the Jaron Hamiltons of the world, Malik McLean's? We'll talk about the receivers in general, but the rapport and the chemistry, we saw flashes, especially I think with Hamilton as spring ball went on. But now this is fall camp. Things are a little different. But also they've had some more time since the fall or last spring practice. So we'll see where they are, and if they can get that going. And I think it's not just the Leavitt to Tyson show. I think then the sky is truly the limit for Sam Leavitt.
Because if you think back to last year, even it took a bit of time for that sort of continuity to be the case with Leavitt and the receivers, even within the season. For as incredible as Jordan Tyson was, it took him a couple games to really, really get going. Do you remember how there were the issues with these deep balls? I mean, I remember that Texas State game. There's a deep touchdown to Tyson, and that was the third game of the season where it's like, finally, they hit one. You remember that timing was a little bit off. And you think about guys like Melquan Stovall, Xavier Guillory, who were just so absolutely clutch last season. That really developed as the season wore on. That was kind of like a back half. Obviously, when Tyson was hurt, they really had to come to the forefront. But those contributions those guys made were really kind of in the back half of the schedule. Oh, by the way, if y'all saw on Twitter, the Big 12, shout out to the Big 12, they put together a 1-hour highlight package of 2024 Sun Devil football. Yeah, they did. And so I had some fun, not too long ago, put the whole thing on. That'll get your emotions rolling. And it's an ASU highlight package. It's not the game where you're seeing the mistakes that ASU might make. So it's pretty much 100% positive for the most part. But, going back and watching those, because they go through the entire season, that was a cool little, preparation tool, because it makes you really shows you the growth and you remember these moments. But yeah, that sort of continuity, if you remember, it took a little bit to develop last year. So I think closing that gap is going to be huge because ASU is going to need to really come firing out of the gates. We've talked about it a few times, I'm not going to say concerned, but folks need to really be aware of those first two Big 12 games, not to take the non-conference lightly at all. So ASU in that first month or so of the season really going to need to be clicking, unless they might find themselves a little bit behind the 8 ball. So yeah, the ability for Sam Leavitt to connect with these wide receivers not named Jordan Tyson, and also factor in running backs and tight ends as well, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I think that there's obviously no drama here. Last year we were talking about a quarterback competition, but this is of course Sam's job. And ASU's feeling pretty good because, of course, with a dual threat quarterback, you always have that risk, as it proved a lot like last year, that he might take a hit that might cause him to miss some snaps. But I think they're in good shape with Jeff Sims. Sims, I thought, put together a pretty nice spring, looked pretty good, kind of similar profile with a guy who can run. So obviously you don't have to change the offense. And I think we talked about in our position confidence rankings, the real questions like the third quarterback spot, Michael Butter Tollefson, the true freshman, Christian Hunley, one-time Arkansas State transfer. If you're getting to those guys, your season's in deep trouble. But I think right now you got to be feeling great if you're Marcus Arroyo in that quarterback room.
Yeah, the only real question in the quarterback room is who will be the third quarterback, and goodness, that's a luxury right there. I mean, even in seasons past where there were incumbent starters that returned, you still had some questions. You still wondered about their growth, development, maybe some miscues or errors or tendencies that they needed to clean up from the previous season. Leavitt, you'd have to be real picky to try to find things that are noticeable holes in his game. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't come down to QB3. Hopefully whomever that person is, hopefully if they're seeing time, it's in a situation where the scoreboard is real friendly to ASU, put it that way.
Yeah. So moving on to running back, where some more questions in the quarterback spot, because of course Cam Scadaboo is now with Big Blue and the Giants, and now ASU. I think it's kind of a money ball situation. I don't think you can replace him. You're not going to replace Cam Scadaboo, but in the aggregate, I think there's enough here for ASU to put forth a quality run game. And if there's one man in the coaching ranks who's earned the confidence of the fans to field a very productive running back, it's of course Sean Aguano. You're looking at a running back room with Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, and newcomer Kanye Udo as probably the presumed top three. Then some younger backs of Jason Brown, or Demarius Man Robinson, and a newcomer coming over the summer, Grayson Rigdon. But right now, I think you're looking at a situation where you have those top three backs, just like we saw in spring, of Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, and Kanye Udo, probably going to be a nice little battle in camp.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm curious about is how does that look? I think a lot of us are real curious how it's going to look for the whole season. As is noted, as we all know, it's for the last several years at ASU, it has been one primary running back getting the vast majority of the reps, and then a big gap from there. I actually kind of crunched the numbers, and that ASU hasn't had a backup running back. So we're putting quarterbacks aside, but its second running back hasn't reached 80 carries since 2017. And that was when Kalen Ballage technically filled that role. You've got to go back to 2015, the last time ASU had three running backs, or three non-quarterbacks rather, with 50 or more carries. And then you got to go back to 2012 to have three non-quarterbacks running the ball 100 times or more in the season. I bring these numbers up, and I'm sure it's stuff we'll talk about as the season gets closer. But just really eager to see how that unfolds, because ASU has, as you mentioned, a really impressive crop of running backs. Some and they all bring a little something. Kyson Brown is really on an ascent there. Raleek Brown showed some promise at USC. Obviously, his 5-star status as a recruit is something that just is always there. Even to the last year, you're going to be excited about that recruiting ranking. Kanye Udo, he ran for over 1,100 yards at Army last year. Now, then that's obviously going to be a step up to Arizona State, though Army was a 12-win team as well. So just really eager to see how fall camp unfolds, especially in the early of the division later. Is it going to be like a turnstile? Everybody gets a shot, or do they already have kind of a pecking order in mind?
It's going to be interesting. Sean Aguano recently, probably some. However, he kept things open and said that he's going to be looking for, and as he said, might be 2, might be 3, might be 4. Now, I don't seem to going to reach 3 or 4 necessarily. Certainly not 4. I don't think.
Yeah.
Mop up situations, but I do think that one of those top 3 guys, maybe complimentary piece. But history tells us that one guy is going to emerge. I personally think this is the year of Kyson Brown, but there's 3 very talented backs. Raleek Brown, if healthy, has shown the explosiveness, but also the power to be a factor running the ball inside. Kanye Udo mentioned just the production there, and I thought he's a little stiff in the early parts of spring. Seemed to get more in the flow and more comfortable in the offense at the end of spring. Now he's had a couple months, so I think it's going to be a really good battle, and also some really good young backs. I don't know that necessarily you're going to see them get more than maybe at the best case, like a situation like a Man Robinson, 4 games on special teams and redshirt or something like that. But overall, I think this is nationally, people are saying Scat's gone. Oh, Scat's gone. They're in trouble. Maybe not as much trouble as they think.
Yeah, I think Kanye Udo might be, and I'm just kind of spitballing right now until we kind of crunch the numbers a little bit more. He might be the player on any side of the ball that I'm most intrigued to see how he performs this fall. To see how he can take what he learned in the spring and use these few months of acclimation, off the field, in the weight room, just being more familiar with the program and how he'll apply that. Because again, I mean, the numbers don't lie. Ran for well over 1,000 yards for a 12-win Army team. I mean, that's something special right there. Especially like when you play for Army in their program, they know that you're going to run the ball with the exception of like 5 plays, so they know what's coming. You're still successful against the opposing defenses. So very curious to see how he has used the time from the end of spring practices to now.
All right, so moving on to wide receiver, where kind of like quarterback, you know what you have, and that's at the top of that depth chart. And that's one of the best players in the nation at his position, Jordan Tyson. He's healthy, he's locked in, he's ready to go. He's got the confidence of his quarterback. After that, that's where I think the big questions come in. Now, ASU did bring in some new faces over the course of the offseason, most notably Jalen Moss, the Fresno State transfer, over 100 career catches during spring, really settled into that starting slot position. Jaron Hamilton, I thought, was very dynamic the last 2.5 weeks of spring ball. The former 4-star out of Alabama, that really looked really good. And Malik McClain looked like a little bit more comfortable. The third member that they brought in from the FBS ranks was Clemson's Noble Johnson, a youngster. Looked like he had some good moments, also some redshirt freshman moments as well. Also a lot of wide receivers, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this pecking order for Sam Leavitt kind of pans out.
Yeah, you really, obviously you got Jordan Tyson at the top there, and Jalen Moss just makes the most sense to be, right behind him at the second wide receiver. And then there's some work to be done. Yeah, I'm really eager to see in fall camp how the big guys and the young guys perform. Starting with the biggins, Malik McClain, you brought him up, man. I mean, it's lightning in the bottle perhaps, but those couple plays he made in the postseason, I mean, you can't not have some expectations for him when you see that sort of thing happen. When you see that guy can make those plays, especially that catch against Iowa State was incredible, and the touchdown against Texas was just, a great complete play right there. But when you see those snapshots of what somebody can do, the experience he has at the college level, his size, and even he was impressive when he arrived kind of late or right before fall camp last year, if I'm not mistaken, but he was really showing out there in most of those practices, Camp T, that sort of thing. So that's someone that, would really, really help to have a big season. And someone that I'm interested in is that Akeem Lanu, the transfer that was headed to Northern Illinois, coming to Arizona State, of course. Depending on what you read, he's either 6'6" or 6'7", either 190 or 200 pounds, somewhere along those lines. No D1 experience, comes from the JUCO level. I was doing some research on him. The team that he played for, their passing numbers were pretty atrocious. So he had like mild numbers. So if you look at it, you're like, okay, that doesn't look like a ton. Didn't seem like the team could pass the ball all that well, is what I gathered from the statistics. Is he someone that can be, that red zone threat, that jump ball guy, or is he more of like a project that they might need to develop for next year? So eager to see how those, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" guys pan out, because you see them, they pass the eye test, at least height wise. And your mind starts to wonder, man, what can they do against some 5'10" cornerbacks?
Saw him in person the other day, and yeah, he does look every bit of that. So it could be right now. I do think it's the top 4 looks like it's pretty clear with Tyson, Moss, McClain, Hamilton. But of course, fall camp is a place where a lot of guys can make moves. I mentioned Noble Johnson as one of the younger wide receivers. Also, some young talent in there. Derek Eusebio made some plays in camp, and of course, had the big score against U of A. Zechariah Sample, the absolute speedster. A couple of true freshmen had some really strong springs. Harry Hassman and Corey Butler, 2 guys that consistently were working with the group, and that of the 1s and the 2s, and guys getting those reps. Will one of those guys have a breakout system, get in that rotation? It remains to be seen. But I think what you have a luxury of having a clear-cut number one of the best in the country. You have another, I think, in a good situation of having a guy in like Jalen Moss, proven over 100 catches at this level, and then some flyers on some very talented guys with some high upsides that have played at some big-time programs, know the expectations, and now have more time in the program to be more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's going to be a great opportunity for the other receivers outside of Jordan Tyson, because when you have such a dynamic known commodity, that opens the door for some other guys to do some things. I mean, you think about, you had Sean McDonald, but Derek Hagan took advantage of that because the defense was focusing on him. Then D. Hague became the man. You got guys like Terry Richardson. You had Brandon Ayuk. Frank Darby really took advantage of that. N'Keal Harry, you got Kyle Williams, the second version of Kyle Williams, taking advantage of that. So you had some guys they're very talented players in their own right, but when you've got that, 1,000+ yard bona fide NFL draft pick, lining up on the other side of the field from you, the defenses are going to be focused there. So these, even though there is a general lack of experience among some of the depth outside of guys like Moss, man, some of them could really take advantage. So I'm really counting on somebody, whether it's Moss, whether it's somebody else, to just really kind of step up in that role. And like we said, as things progressed with Stovall and Guillory last year, we see what's available in this offense and what Leavitt can do, and he can spread the ball around a little bit. So if I'm some of these receivers, I'm loving the fact that Jordan Tyson's getting all these headlines, getting all this attention, because that means, teams can focus on him. And if I'm here one-on-one, I'm confident in myself I can make it happen. So there'll be opportunities for these guys to do something.
Absolutely. So you're obviously going to be locking in, trying to make sure Jordan Tyson doesn't beat you, but then you also got to worry about Jalen Moss, coming out of the Jaron Hamilton, Malik McLean taking the top off of defense. And oh, by the way, there's a group of tight ends you got to worry about. The tight end group that we are both very high on that returns Shimon Mateer, an all Big 12 second teamer a season ago. Cameron Harpole, I think, has made strides. He was the kind of unsung number 2 there. Oh, yeah. Then you add Kamari Anderson, a former 4-star out of Kentucky, 6'6", 230, who is making some big time plays down the field, stretching the defense along the seams in spring. And then the freak AJ Ia. I mean, it is a deep, deep group that Jason Mons has at his disposal.
Yeah, and that's why, I was so high on them when we did our position confidence rankings. This has the potential right now. That's all that it is. It's got to be put, into the games, but it has the potential to be the deepest and most effective and dynamic tight end group that probably I've seen in my time following ASU. And again, they've had some legends, the likes of Todd Heap and so on. But this is something where if you put together a group of 3, 4, 5 guys that can go out there and really compete, that's a big deal. So for me, kind of a question for fall camp or something to observe, similar to running back. It's like, how do they work this all out? I mean, how do you make it so that you have, because you've really got, no fewer than 4 guys that you figure you got to get out there in some capacity. How do you put that together? And, most specifically among that, what do they have in store for AJE? Because we know that Mateer is, he's the starting tight end. He's experienced. He was that second team all Big 12 honoree last year. So he's a guy that's got his role. The others kind of do as well. How do you fit AJE in there? Because barring injury, that guy ain't redshirt, and that's for sure. That is a man. So that's going to be just something very, very intriguing to watch unfold.
It's a nice luxury where you have somebody of that pedigree that you don't need to force in there, because you have so many guys that are, ahead of him on the depth chart, at least coming into fall camp. He could make a move, but right now, you have some veteran guys at this level that have been, 2 guys have been a part of a Big 12 title winner. Another guy come in who played some SEC ball and is already making some good chemistry moves with his quarterback. So I do think you're going to see some 12, maybe some 13 personnel. Hell, we'll go 14.
Yeah.
But let's get crazy. Let's for creative offensive minds like Marcus Arroyo and Kenny Dillingham, both guys who like to use tight ends in their offense. Man, this is great. And not to get too far ahead, but a couple of very talented commits in the 2026 class as well. So it looks like, I know it's been a running joke for a while, like, oh, is this year the tight end's back? But man, like if this could start to get going here at this position for a little bit.
Yeah, and they're real versatile, so you can use them a number of different ways. You can be creative offensively. So I'm curious, if we're going to see some of them, split out on occasion and using that as just a new wrinkle, to really just throw off the defenses. You can have some crazy mismatches. And again, imagine AJE going up against a 5'11" defensive back or safety or something like that. I'm going to like those odds just about every single time.
All right, so let's move on to the offensive line. 4 starters back. We've talked about all off season, although one of those is, of course, Ben Coleman moving from left guard to center. Very big shoes to fill with Leaf Fatanu now in the NFL. But I think overall it's a pretty good group, pretty good situation for Coach Saga Tuatele. But there are some question marks because right now, most notably, how's that left guard situation going to go? Ben Coleman, of course, moving to center. But also there's some new faces there, some young guys that are going to be looking to make their mark, get in that rotation, because Tuatele likes to use a lot of offensive linemen. Jalen Clem's back in the mix, so I think this is kind of a sneaky, maybe a under the radar group to watch in terms of the position battles and how things shake out in the depth chart.
Yeah, I mean, if we had to make educated guesses on how the lineup would look, obviously, you have Josh Atkins, Maxi Hanator on the left and right tackle. right guard Kyle Scott. We know Ben Coleman's moving to center. Left guard seems to be in between Sean Naa and Jimento Abibo from Texas State. So, yeah, a lot of eyes are going to be on how Ben Coleman makes that transition to center. I mean, this is someone that is kind of becoming like that Grayling Love. Maybe down the road he can be our, next generation pick for that utility offensive lineman, because Ben played a number of different positions at Cal, guarded ASU, now moving to center. That's something where there are some learning curves and growing pains and that sort of thing. So, but Ben is obviously a highly talented athlete, a smart guy. So, we've obviously spoken with him numerous times. You all know what he's all about. So that's something that, the expectations are very high. He is the, highest applauded offensive lineman on the roster right now. So that transition, if anybody's going to make it, it'd be successful. He's the kind of guy that can. So also eager to see just the continued progress from those other starters I mentioned that were either first-time starters or new to ASU. Guys like, again, all the others. They all have some kind of minor questions of, what will we see out of them? And especially if someone like Sean Naa gets, brought into action. He was on the sidelines all last year. So again, even though it's a unit that returns essentially 4 out of 5 starters, which in any circumstance is a very good thing, there are still some questions, to be answered. And there are a lot of bodies on this roster. I mean, you look down the offensive line. I mean, they can go several rungs of the ladder deep with scholarship talent. Obviously, they added several between the transfer portal, like the Helton twins or Taloma coming out of the JUCO ranks. So a lot of competition going to be there, despite the fact of those 4 out of 5 starters returning.
Yeah, and spoke to Coach Tuatele recently. Said that as of right now, heading into fall camp, Jalen Clem is probably looking like that number 3 tackle. Champ Westbrook's also a guy that he looks at as a future fixture. But both those guys have the ability to play left and right tackle. But you mentioned the Helton brothers, Brent and Wade Helton, coming over from Iowa State. Looks like they could possibly be in the mix at left guard as well. Also some versatility to play elsewhere. Terrell Kim, he's gone from 380 pounds a season ago now down to 320. Kind of similar to Josh Atkins, who is down near over 20 pounds as well. Offensive line seems to be getting into some better shape this year, and some guys that are really making some moves, positioning themselves well, and they're going to get a chance. We saw true freshman Makai Stewart, 6'6", 330-pounder, guy who projects very well for the interior. As a true freshman, made some waves in spring. It's obviously pretty hard for a true freshman lineman to make any kind of impact. Not impossible. Maybe he gets in there as well. But I think you have a situation where you have some veteran guys and some for those spots, but also another wave. So, I know like sometimes the offensive line in a program, they like to refer to as like shark's teeth. You have the rows and just the first row graduates out, moves on, and you just have that next row ready to go. So, but it's gonna be interesting to see in fall camp how specifically left guard shakes out, but also the rest of that 2 deep.
Yeah, if we want to look crazy far ahead, we've been saying, like, let's not look far ahead and talk about the season. Let's not look too far ahead and talk about 2026. But depending on how things go with the whole JUCO transfers and how this past year they got an extra year of eligibility, if that sort of thing doesn't happen again, it's very plausible that ASU's entire starting 5, depending on who it is, could all be gone after this season. So yeah, to your point, that development that still needs to continue. And you've got some young guys. It's a great situation that they're in, of course, to have an experienced offensive line to where you're not having to throw, truer redshirt freshmen into the fire before the time that they're ready. But you also kind of have the scenario where, hey, just be a little bit patient, because this time next year, a lot of opportunity. So it's kind of a good blend.
All right. So switching over now to the defensive line. Number one question there. We know the experience is there. We know the talent is there. But we've been talking all offseason long, Joe. What's the deal with the pass rush? These guys have to get after the quarterback, have to impact the quarterback in a much better sense. Dyron Reynolds has been very clear. That's his number one goal as well. You return basically the 3 deep. JP Dieter's gone. You add Michael Gardner, the former 4-star local product. He's coming over from Oregon as well. The pieces are in place, whether it's the edge or the interior guys. You feel pretty good. I think they did a great job against the run by and large last year. You figure with a lot of these guys in year 2 and a lot of these guys, and especially in year 3 in this scheme, going to have some good performances. But man, they just have to get back and make those quarterbacks live, because it was kind of weird, or interesting that the Big 12 at Media Day this year kind of did what the Pac-12 did in their last year of existence and relevance. Oh, this is where the conference of quarterbacks this year. We have so many good quarterbacks. And, that was true of the Pac-12 back then.
Yep.
And it could be very true in the Big 12. And ASU's got some talented ones on the upcoming schedule.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's really interesting because it feels odd to really harp on this one topic with a group that is still very good. Again, you're not kind of acting like you're replacing players that like this. These people just aren't getting the job done. You got to bail on them and switch them out and find somebody new. It's really not the case. It's just kind of adding that wrinkle to it, but a very, very important wrinkle. And you've got a lot of depth. And the thing is, they've shown the ability to do so. Prince Dorba, as we've talked about, I know you mentioned last time out, he had that small stretch his first season with ASU where he was on fire, with the sacks that he was accruing. Didn't quite go up to that level last year, in a full-time capacity. Elijah O'Neal has shown some flashes of really being able to get that done. Maybe he's rejuvenated because he got that extra year due to those policies regarding former JUCO transfers. Clayton Smith, of course, we talk about those 5-star guys like Raleek Brown and some others. He has that as well. And again, Clayton Smith, I mean, this is a known commodity, a very good player. We just need to see that part out of them. Maybe it's from some names that we aren't quite as familiar with. I know you've been really singing the praises of Roman Petrie, for pretty much the entire offseason, or some of the redshirt freshmen, the Albert Smiths or the Ramar Williams of the world. I mean, that could be a possibility. Joshua Shanklin, the JUCO transfer who came over, during the spring. He wasn't here for spring, but during that time period, he committed to Arizona State. And, some of the interior guys, the CJ Fights, of course, he's someone that is really taken major steps from, true freshman during that season from year 1 to year 2. So we'll see what he's got in store for year 3. Anthony Cooper is still around, and he's someone that in the past was able to get to the quarterback. So you feel like the pieces are there. Like it's just, you just got to make it happen. But that's going to be such an integral thing. And as we talked about last time out, we're not necessarily someone's got to come out here and be a Terrell Suggs or a Will Sutton, but if you want to have your season sack leader, be somewhere like in the 8-ish range, something like that, not like in the 4 to 5.
Yeah, I mean they're just so loaded with the names that if you followed the Sun Devils last year, with Smith, Dorba, Elijah Neal, Justin Watley in there, coming off the edge. Then the interior guys of Kangaika, Fight, Zach Swanson as well. Gardner could play a role in there, but overall, you get a sense that they're going to be pretty stout against the run. Just got to be more explosive, make those TFLs because the up and down this entire defense is really obviously. So many returning guys, so much returning production. I think it's going to be sneaky. One of the best units in the country, not just the conference. And moving on to linebacker as well. It's just kind of the same story there. You have a lot of the returning faces there. Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott, your returning starters. Zyrus Fiaseu, also in the first guy off that bench. But all 3 of those guys are in their second year. All 3 looked much more comfortable, just kind of more instinctive as they were more comfortable in this defense. And I just think that this is, the D-line might get some attention, the secondary for sure, but I think the linebackers, and I even touched on, I have the most confidence in them of any position group on this team.
Yeah, if they can reach their potential, I mean, that is a group that can really do some things. And it's, kind of like tight end. There's some significant depth there, especially for a defense that, throws 2 guys out there more often than not. So it's that first wave, those top 3, really, really impressive. And it's not limited to that, but where my, the things I want to see in fall camp come about, it's going to be at that next rung. A guy like Martell Hughes, who we talked about quite a bit on the last episode, someone that showed some flashes on defense and special teams last year as a true freshman. What's in store from year 1 to 2 for him? Because similar to the offensive line, if you're a guy like Martell Hughes, you look at those ones that are, theoretically going to be ahead of you in the depth chart. Every single one of them's got senior. So this is a deal where you do your thing now and you contribute, and next year you're the main guy at the position, realistically speaking. Tate Romney still around, and year before last, man, he was such a contributor. Obviously, ASU beefed up the ability of the linebacker group significantly from 2023 to 2024, but he's someone who, I mean, as a reserve, that's a guy that's a solid guy to have out there. So that's kind of going to be where my eyes are, what are those second or even third string guys doing to where you can have that rotation, the next man up mentality, and not drop off too much, because this linebacker group, man, it has the potential to be something special.
And really impressed with how they were used. And I mentioned they were playing more instinctive, making a lot of plays in spring behind the line of scrimmage. Moving on to corner, Joe, kind of the same situation. You return your starters there. Keith Abney, Javen Robinson, I think are going to be among the best in the Big 12, if not maybe the entire country. I am just kind of like with Kyson Brown on offense. I am riding high on Keith Abney, national star this upcoming season. I really loved what I saw from him in spring. That's not saying anything about Javen Robinson, who's also leveling up as well. Obviously, had one of the iconic plays in recent Sun Devil history with that pick. So you feel good there. But also, I think the question here, just kind of like the other positions, what happens after the starters?
Yeah, and now that third cornerback, as we talked about, Rodney Bimage is someone that is really impressive. Came to ASU, some decent credentials. They treated his true freshman season great. They got him some action. He contributed, but he still redshirted. So that's someone that's really looking into that third cornerback role. I believe Nyland Green, the former 5-star, if I'm not mistaken, is also there as well. And that's someone, again, anytime you just hear former 5-star, even if these days that was like 6 years ago, that's something that still carries, and that's going to get fans excited, especially if it's the first season that this player is with Arizona State. They might kind of bypass what's happened to the college level and just look back to that. Might just need the right circumstances to really capitalize upon it. But I mean, if those are your 4 guys out there, I mean, that is something pretty impressive. And I think you're in a position where that's a significant upgrade over last season, because you have the same 2 starters back, and those guys, again, similar to Sam Leavitt, the progress that the combination of Abney and Robinson made from game 1 to game 14 last year, I thought was incredible. And then, yes, you lose LT Welch, but I think a guy like Bimage can be as good, if not better than him, and you have more depth than you did last year. So I'm really expecting this cornerback group to be very, very good and even improved from last year. And then tying that into earlier talking about the pass rush, I mean, if ASU can just take that up like a letter grade or so, whatever you want to call the pass rush last year. I'm not going to put a letter grade on it right now, but if you can just bump that up a letter grade, I mean, think of the ripple effect that's going to have. Think about how much easier that's going to make life for these cornerbacks and the others that are, associated with the defense. So obviously everything's a function of itself here when you're talking about the defense, but I'm pretty excited about these corners because, again, can't say enough about how impressed I was with the advancements that these 2 starters made over the course of last year. We'll see what the 25's got in store for them.
Bimage was, I think, in my opinion, one of the MVPs of spring. He really looked like he was ready. Unfortunately, of course, Plas Johnson suffered the knee injury and will miss the season in spring. He looked like he was maybe gunning for one of that cornerback 3 or 4 spot. He was having a tremendous camp. But again, having a guy like Nyland Green who looked more comfortable, you feel pretty good there. You mentioned the pass rush if they can get going, but also if you're those corners, you also have a really good safety group behind you guarding that back line. Xavier Alford, Ghost Rouser. What more can you really say? Those are 2 guys that are among the very best in their position. Alford, of course, a reigning first teamer all conference. But I think that you saw some guys make their moves behind them. Chris Johnson, Tony Lewis and Kuba, Jack Ball in spring. So I think on the traditional 2 safety spots, you have good depth. You feel pretty good there. But there is, of course, one looming question on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about those 2 kind of traditional spots, they give you the skill set that you're looking for. Ghost Rouser is like that strong safety that's going to come up and punch you directly in the mouth, probably say something about it, but that's not a bad thing all the time. And then Alford is someone that can be out there, be that center fielder out there, that Isaiah Jackson doing his thing, if you know what I'm saying. So that's a great pairing there. And then, yeah, you get to that nickel defensive back because you're generally speaking looking at the second most important player ASU is going to have to replace heading into the season. Of course, Shamari Simmons. Now then, there are a lot of names out there and ones that have some, solid reputation to them. Of course, you got a guy like Montana Warren who's been with the program for a little bit. You got Adrian Wilson coming over from Washington State who was banged up in the spring. You bring over Maurice Williams from Houston, a guy with a really high upside as well. There are a number of others that can compete with that. I mean, you've got multiple players just in that specific competition that I think could start for a lot of other schools in this conference. So though we don't know how it's going to unfold, I think that ASU is as well equipped as they really could be as far as just having the pieces to compete against one another to keep that position at the highest possible level.
Yeah, it's really great situation for Brian Ward, who also coaches the safeties in terms of, what guys to plug and play there, where, because, you have 2 of the best on the back line and then that safety or that nickel spot. And whether it is a Montana Warren, a Kendrick Breedlove.
I didn't even mention Breedlove too. There are like 4 or 5 guys that are going to be out there.
Yeah, Breedlove and Warren were the top 2 during spring practices. That Breedlove kind of closed that gap a little bit with Warren running with the ones throughout spring most often. Of course, he's more familiar with the defense, but yeah, and that's a big question I have is, like you mentioned, Maurice Williams coming over from Houston, Boogie Wilson from Wazoo, obviously with Wilson having that familiarity with the defense from his time with Brian Ward. So I'm interested because those are two veteran safeties. And we mentioned the younger guys like the Tony Lewis and Kuba, Chris Johnson, some converted corners who have some good coverage ability. Jack Ball, maybe a guy that might have been forgotten, but he was making some plays in spring. So it's a huge question mark, but I think that there's some very intriguing pieces. Now we'll see exactly. There's certainly no guarantee that one of them's going to come in, and obviously the standard of Shamar Simmons is not something I'm going to throw down on any of these guys in terms of an expectation. But there maybe it is a more by committee approach by style. But I think that there's some talented pieces, and we'll see how it all sorts out.
Yeah, like I said, it's something that at the bare minimum, you've got to be, thankful for ASU having the pieces they have to be able to replace Simmons however they possibly can. I mean, you can't really have asked too much more of this staff because many of these names that we're talking about, Breedlove, Wilson, Williams, these are all transfer portal guys. So they brought them all in. Like that's probably a challenging thing to bring a lot of guys in essentially at the same position, guys who've started elsewhere and say, all right, we only got spot, a real big spot for one of you. We probably have spots for all of you. You're going to get some game time action, that's for sure. But man, that is quite the list right there. So that's going to be, a position battle, I would say, certainly on the defense, because there just aren't that many battles that are going to be the case. But that's going to be the most notable on defense is watching that one. I think for a lot of folks, myself included, it's going to be running back on offense and Nickelback on defense. Those are going to be the two ones folks are going to be keeping an eye on.
All right, so let's close things out with a look at special teams. Now, of course, it was a bit of an adventure last year in a number of ways for Charlie Ragel's unit, but looks like they went out, they were aggressive and bringing in some options. And Jesus Gomez obviously is going to be the headliner here in terms of the place kicker, the multiple-time All-MAC performer, guy who got Herm Edwards fired thanks to his kicking for Eastern Michigan.
Retires number before he even plays a game.
Had a pretty solid spring, showing off a very powerful left leg. So it looks like there's not going to be a ton of drama there. Carson Kiefer is back as an experienced veteran there to back him up a little bit. But I think right now, Joe, you have a battle or potential battle at punter with a new face coming from down under.
Yeah, I mean, as it pertains to the kicker, Jesus Gomez, at the very, very, very worst, the expectation should be for him to not be a liability. You know what I mean? Like that's like if he has like the poorest season we can really imagine on a realistic basis, it's just that, he was kicking fine from within 40, 45, but maybe just didn't have the super leg to it. But he's also proven much more than that at the collegiate level. That's why for me, it's pretty easy to get excited about him because he's done it for multiple years, probably in some tough circumstances, tough conditions when he was playing at Eastern Michigan, playing the MAC and the MACtion and all that crazy mess that goes on. So that's someone, again, very intrigued to see. I'm sure folks have a ton of trepidation because that battered fan syndrome is going to tell you if a place kicker walks out there, whether he's kicking a 20-yarder or a 60-yarder, it's going to have the same level of nervousness for a lot of Sun Devil fans. So hopefully Gomez can help kind of cool those waters a little bit. But yep, talking about punter Kenyon Floyd, solid season for the most part. As a true freshman, things that were not necessarily out of this world, but we've seen punting come back and haunt ASU in the past, and that wasn't necessarily the case in any really significant circumstances last year. But yeah, Matt McKenzie, the Australian punter, if you bring a guy like that in and your returning punter is just a true sophomore, it's not like he's a senior and you got to kind of recoup for the future. That tells you that they're looking for some competition. So I'm really intrigued to see how that goes. And we don't know really anything about McKenzie, quite frankly, other than the fact that he's Australian and that works some places, the rugby style of things. So that's going to be an interesting guy to see, what he does in the spring. I know, or excuse me, the fall camp. I know that, special team stuff sometimes is a little limited there, but yeah, really eager to see if that is like a legitimate competition. Will this be a deal where in some circumstances, depending on like field position or whatever the scenario may be, that it'll be Floyd? Are there going to be some scenarios where you put a guy like McKenzie out there? Is it that kind of strategy and chess game to it? We don't know. We will see. If ASU special teams in general, especially obviously the kick game, but not limited to that, if they can make some strides, again, kind of like, the pass rush, where if you just beef that up a letter grade from last year, that could really help you out.
Yeah, and we should also mention that they brought in a new long snapper to compete with Tyler Wigglesworth. Cade Davis is coming over from Marshall, had previously spent time with the JUCO ranks and Oklahoma State. So the long snappers, and just like the holders, if you don't know their name, they're doing their job well.
There you go. Right. Yeah, exactly. And then he's someone that, again, he's a senior as well. So, you're replacing the departed long snapper, even though you have Wigglesworth back on the roster. So if you're bringing in a guy like that, who's a senior with 1 year left to play, just kind of makes you think that they might have the clubhouse advantage to begin with. But those are yet again these subtle, unheralded position battles that we'll see how things shake out, because special teams in general, it's been a tough run in a lot of capacities, but there are some pieces in place where maybe they can make some strides this year.
All right, so let's close things out with maybe highlighting some guys that we think are breakout candidates. There's always some guys, we used to call it, what was the James Morrison Award or something. Some guy would have a great camp, and unfortunately, Morrison never translated it into the regular season. But these are some guys that we think have an opportunity and that perhaps will have a great showing. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, Joe. Who's the guy that you like on D?
Man, let's see here. So, because I'm trying to think as far as ones that I think might like have the opportunity, to do something special versus some that, are a little bit more substantiated. I think Rodney Bimage is probably a little too easy of an answer because he's someone that, went out there and got the job done. I'm going to look at Martell Hughes. I'm really eager to see how he does in this year too, because I just really feel like when that punt block happened that was returned for a touchdown, that seemed to be like a big confidence builder for him, because he seemed to get a little bit more involved in the action. So that's someone that I'll put out there again, because it's a tough call to make, because you look at the roster, and again, with so much experience coming back, you just have too many known commodities. So it's kind of a good thing. It's a definite luxury to focus on a guy that's a second or maybe even third stringer in this circumstance. So I'd say one that I'd say on defense would be Martell Hughes.
All right, I'm going to go with defensive end Roman Petrie. You mentioned, I've been kind of singing his praises for a while. A guy that came over from Purdue a couple years back, still relatively new to the position, but in spring, it's like every practice he was doing something good. He was getting a TFL, he was getting the quarterback pressure, and he wasn't getting home with his pass rush. He's a big, long dude. He was getting his arms up and batted a ton of balls, looking like Dikembe Mutombo out there as well. So I think that, obviously it's the edge spot is very loaded. You got Dorba, Clayton, Smith, Elijah O'Neal, Justin Watley in that mix well, but I wouldn't be surprised if seeing Roman Petrie in there as well. All right, Joe, an offensive breakout candidate.
So I'm gonna go with Kanye Udo, because I'm really intrigued to see how he's used the time, from spring ball to now. The numbers are just too appealing. Again, just going back to that once again, talking about when you have a former 5-star recruit, like you can't get that out of your head. Like he's the 5-star guy, and maybe in just the drop of a dime, he can turn it on and be an All-American. A little different with Udo, but he got an 1,100-yard rusher, leave double-digit touchdowns, rush for nearly 6 yards a carry or somewhere in that ballpark, just going off memory, playing for a good team, a 12-win Army team. That all comes together. You get Sean Aguano in the mix. I know that Kyson Brown's going to be a big deal, but I think I'm really curious to see if Kanye Udo can make it more of just like a 1-1A versus a 1-2. I think he's shown that he can do it on the field. And, that's someone that I'm sure really took in and absorbed what he experienced in the spring, as well as the remainder of the offseason. Really looking for him to come out wanting to claim that position, because a lot of folks have been talking about Kyson Brown, and with good reason. Highly talented player. I'm wondering if Udo might take that in and say, you know what, like, don't write me off just yet.
So I was going to say Kyson Brown, because I do think he's going to be the dude out of the backfield this year. So I'll change it up though. Jaron Hamilton, the wide receiver. I mean, we know that Jordan Tyson is going to be the man, and that Jalen Moss is probably going to be pushing, 40, 50 catches over, out of that slot position. He's a very talented guy. But I think Jaron Hamilton, based on what we saw in the spring, and parlaying that into fall camp and that chemistry, I think he could be the big play guy. Maybe he catches, 3 dozen balls this year, but maybe he's a guy that has an 18 to 20 yard per catch average. He has that kind of explosiveness and that rapport. And we and watching the practices throughout spring, it was consistent, especially those last few weeks when that chemistry with Leavitt really dialed in. So I'm going to say that Jaron Hamilton's not going to maybe have the maybe not be the top 2-3 in the receptions, because I think, we factor in the tight ends, but I think he's going to be one of those guys that every time, like a Gary Chambers or early career Frank Darby, like he makes those big catches. Like he's going to, you remember what he does with the ball in his hands. I think that's a look at fall camp, Joe.
Yeah, it's very surreal to
Yeah.
discuss in this way. It's like, you know, there are very few unknowns, very few surprises. Again, to these breakout players, we have to kind of by default go for guys that are going to be kind of that second to maybe third string, and maybe they can use fall camp to, you know, go to a higher position. But man, this is just a real interesting situation. And again, we got to take it one step at a time, but things remain exciting. The expectations remain high, and fall camp just about to kick off is going to be these first steps in determining if ASU is going to keep this football program headed on this just incredible trajectory it began last year.
So before we close things out, bringing a conversation with a guy that we will probably be talking about this time next year. ASU recently landed a nice commitment out of Ohio with 2026 tight end Landon Miree. All right, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State ultimately the best place for you?
I tell a lot of people this is I just feel like the coaching staff is the realest in the game right now. Like they kept it real for me since day one. They was the most persistent coaches recruiting me throughout this whole process. And I also like that they reach out with my family more than they do me. So like I respect that.
So, of course, during the recruiting process, you know, lots of things are said and done by the various schools out there. You mentioned the realness of that staff. You know, throughout the process, what were maybe some specific things that really jumped out to you most as, you know, showing their sincerity and their straightforwardness?
I think it was like because some schools say like you can come here be the starter, blah 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 blah. But this school like Arizona State, they really told me like it ain't just gonna come to me. I got to go get it, and I really respect that because I'm a go get it.
So, of course, you know, we're also coming out here into the desert and, you know, seeing things up close, meeting these people face to face. What things, you know, about your time visiting the school in the Tempe region in general really kind of, you know, jumped out to you most and really made you feel comfortable about coming here?
It got to be the weather. You know, coming from Cincinnati, we don't get that weather too often. I think that's perfect football weather. Never a raindrop or nothing, just straight football.
Of course, you know, during the summers though, we do pay the price a little bit here though.
Yeah,
But of course, you know, getting to know Kenny Dillingham, you know, still one of the youngest coaches in the entire country. But you know, a guy who likes to have a lot of fun, but also has you know, a program where you guys work very hard. What's it like having that kind of players coach and a guy on the younger side of things?
I mean, it's just I think it's better. Like he's real fired up. He gets the players going. I can see him getting me going. It's just like I think it like matches with my personality.
One of the things that he's become famous for is doing some magic tricks during recruiting visits. Did he do any magic during
Yeah,
your time?
yeah. My papa actually taught him some too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what were some of the tricks that he did, and also maybe what was the trick that he learned?
Oh wait, magic trick you said?
Yeah.
No, he showed like this trick that he do like to incoming freshmen, like where you like say 100 from if I make this shot. Like you know how they got the basketball hoop in their facility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he says how he stands all the way in the back and says how I bet you 100 push-ups I'll make this shot. And they say bet. And then he goes like then he goes shoot a layup and they got to do 100 push-ups. And then my papa taught him like if I can do 2 to 300 push-ups, you gotta do I forget what he said, you gotta do something, but then my papa did 2 push-ups because he said 300 and it was a little fun.
The devil's always in the details there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, speaking of, you know, some of the coaches on that staff, Jason Mons, your future position coach, has done pretty well for himself and putting together a very formidable, very talented tight end room. What has jumped out to you most and during about Jason Mons during your time building that relationship with him?
Like I said, it's just real. Like they just tell you straight up, man. They've been real persistent with me, knowing that I was their guy. It just I couldn't go wrong with it. It was hard to say no to.
So obviously you're a very talented guy. A lot of big time schools coming after you. For any ASU fans who might not have seen your huddle film or see you in action, give our viewers and listeners a self scouting report on what kind of skills you bring to a football field.
I just think like I'm a matchup nightmare. Wherever I go, I'm a mismatch. Like if I'm in the ground blocking, I'm a mismatch. I'm gonna put you in the ground. If I'm running a route, you can't guard me. You're too slow. I just think wherever I'm at, I'm a mismatch.
In getting to know ASU and the offensive scheme of Marcus Arroyo and Kenny Dillingham, how have you seen this offensive scheme utilize the tight end position?
I mean, like with Shaman, like they're always going to find a way to get the players the ball, and I feel like I'm a player, so I feel like I know they're gonna give me the ball.
And then, of course, there's a lot of very talented young tight ends on the roster now, and also, of course, like yourself coming in the next class. What's it like just going into a situation where there's going to be a lot of competition, but a lot of good brotherhood there as well?
I mean, that's all you can ask for. You can't. I know it's all comes to competition at the end of the day, like trying to start and stuff, but like it don't get no better than after all that, y'all can just click like brothers and just go on about your day. Like it's nothing better than that.
So, of course, this is a program that prioritizes bringing in very talented football players, but also people of high character as well. So, what kind of person is this Sun Devil program getting off the field?
I mean, I'm a genuine guy. I put my head down. I'm not cocky. I think I'm a great guy. My parents always taught me to be respectful. Without respect, it won't get you nowhere.
So, what are of course, one final season of high school ball ahead of you? What are some of the things that you want to accomplish? Both for yourself, your high school team, but also in the process, getting yourself ready for making that big jump to major college football.
For team, I obviously want to win state. We got to do better than we did last year. We lost to the state championship. We lost to the state champion team by 18 points. I think we should have won that. I feel like we just broke down as a team. But as a personal goal, like I want to break the record. I'm about 800 yards away from the record, the all-time receiving record at Princeton, and I feel like I can break that this year. And what was the last question?
Oh, and just some of the things that you want to do during next season that'll help prepare you for the jump up to college football.
I'm gonna just continue what I've been doing for the past 14 years of my life, 6 days a week, 2 to 3 times a day. I think it helped me so far. I think it can continue to help me and just carrying it on to college and keeping that regiment.
So you've made a lot of big catches so far in your young career. What's your favorite catch? Walk us through the play where you made the catch. It still kind of ranks you as your personal number one.
That's hard. Nobody asked me that before. I'll probably say I got three. I'll probably say I got three favorite.
All right, here we go.
So one of them, it was a game winning touchdown. I was getting bracketed, and I ran a post corner, and I made one of them fall, and I got a toe tap in the end zone.
Oh, nice.
They're all toe taps. I love toe taps. The second one, I ran a bench corner from the outside receiver. And then the quarterback just threw it up. I went on top of his head, got both feet in, about 30 yards. And the last one, it was a touchdown. It was it was a 2-point conversion, and it was like my quarterback running around the pocket for it felt like 20 seconds. Like then I was in the back pylon. He just threw it up. He threw it out of bounds, and I caught it and got both feet in at the same time. So those are my three favorites.
Very nice, very nice. So a lot of Sun Devil fans will, of course, be looking forward to your toe taps in Tempe. So ultimately, in the future, when you're running out through Tillman Tunnel, wearing that maroon and gold, what do you think that thought's going to be running through your head at that moment when you kind of realize that moment of becoming a Sun Devil and embarking on your college career?
I can't even imagine it. It's just gonna be in a moment. Like it's gonna be like I'm finally here. Can't wait.
And then, what kind of message would you have for Sun Devil fans? A lot of folks are down here are very excited about your commitment, and so ultimately, they got to wait a little bit till you get here. But what's a message for Sun Devil fans for what they can expect when you are finally a Sun Devil?
I'm gonna put my head down, work, and bring us a natty to Tempe.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guest, Landon Miree, ASU's 2026 tight end commit. Football's back. No better time to follow us on the social media side of things. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/SOTD Podcast. And give me a follow on all things social media at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. And as always, a huge shout out to our awesome, outstanding sponsors, Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express, DevilsDigest.com, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities.
As well as Home Field Apparel. Make sure you use offer code while you can, SUN24, SUN24 at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. Gets you 15% off your first order from the good brand. A lot of good ASU items in that collection. And also make sure to give us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We'd greatly appreciate it. Joe and I will be back next week. We're talking a little Big 12, a little national football, and see, with the team coming in like the Sun Devils with some national expectations, how are they going to all fit in?